Nothing gets a catfisherman's blood pumping like trying to fight a large flathead catfish. They're not like the other two species we have here in the Midwest. Blues and channels are group up, meaning you can catch quite a few within a small area. But that's not the case with flatheads. Flatheads are like the mature bucks of our lakes and rivers. It is rare to find more than one large flathead in any structure. You have to actively seek out their stomping ground, meaning you got to go from structure to structure, hoping you put the right bait in the right spot to get their attention. And this can be difficult. You could spend a lot of time sitting there just staring at an unmoving pole, just never feeling the exhilaration of a large flathead catfish trying to pull you in. So in this video, we're going to go over 3 things to help you catch more large flathead catfish. And this will help you whether you're in a boat or you're stalking around on the bank. But before we get into the tips, do me a favor, and if this is your first time on my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a video. Also, give the video a thumbs up if you like the tips. It helps the channel grow tremendously. And the first thing you need to know to consistently catch more large flathead catfish is where they hold up and when. Like I explained earlier, flatheads are loners. They will actively push other flatheads out of their spots. They don't like to be crowded. During the heat of the day, flatheads will hold up in deep structure like rock piles, logs, steep cliff faces, things like that. And at night, these flatheads will move to shallower water looking for food. So knowing where there is good structure adjacent to deep water is key to consistently finding flatheads. And once you've identified these areas, you need to mark them on a map or your fish finder so you can come back to them every time you come out and fish. Also, keep a note of the spots you actually do catch a fish, because if you've caught a fish in that spot, there's a reason it was there. Chances are down the road, another one's going to move in. And the second thing you need to know to catch more large flathead catfish is that live bait is by far the best bait. It does not matter what kind of bait you use as long as it's alive. And don't get me wrong, you can catch some flatheads on other baits like cut bait or worms or some random concoction of a prepared bait, but chances are that was a small juvenile flathead. If you want to catch large flatheads, it has to be alive. And this could be bluegill, perch, goldeneye, skipjack, shad, anything else you can think of. Just make sure you check your regulations because each state is different. Here in Missouri, any non-game species is okay to use. I found that bluegill is by far the easiest to catch and care for. I'll go out the day before I plan to go chasing flatheads and stock up on bluegill and perch. I'll use a tiny hook with small pieces of worm, and you can usually catch about a dozen or so within a half hour. I will also bring this setup with me when I do go out catfishing because you never know, stuff could happen. You could run out of bait or they could all die. And it also gives you something to do if you're having trouble finding flatheads. You might spend the time catching some bluegill and perch while you're waiting on that first bite. And how you hook your live bait matters too, because you could cause too much damage and that bait could die too quickly. Or it could just die immediately depending on how you hook it. Now everybody has their own preferred method of how they like to hook up their live bait. But what I do is I will run the hook through the bottom lip and up through the top out of the nose. It keeps them alive longer and it provides a more natural presentation because that bait can still swim naturally. And just out of curiosity, let me know down in the comments below what your favorite bait to use to catch catfish is and how you like to hook it. And the third thing you need to consistently catch more flathead catfish is you have to develop your patience and your persistence. I know it seems like every video I do, I give the tip of developing your patience, but it's so important for so many things we do, whether it's hunting or fishing. You got to be patient enough to catch these larger catfish. It does not matter if you use the best equipment, the best bait, you've got the best spot picked out, if you don't have the patience to wait for that flathead to take the bait. Even if you're in a good spot, you may have to wait a half hour or so before you get the first little nibble. And even then, you have to have the patience to wait for that fish to actually take your bait. A big mistake a lot of flathead catfishermen make is as soon as they get that first little tap, that first nibble, they will yank that pole as hard as they can like they're catching bass. And this is especially bad if you're using circle hooks. You have to wait for that flathead to fully commit to the bite. It's not like a blue catfish who will just slam your pole as soon as it takes a hold of it. Flatheads, they're a little more finicky. They will play with it a little bit before they decide they're going to pick it up and run off with it. Once that happens, once your pole starts to bend and that line starts moving off, reel down on it. And patience isn't the only thing you have to develop. If you want to catch more large flatheads, you have to have the persistence to keep getting after it, to keep moving spots to find out where these flatheads are holed up. You may have to move 2 or 3 or even 4 times before you find that first flathead. And once you do, make sure you're patient enough to wait for him to fully take the bite, because it is terrible to move around for an hour to finally get a bite and then you missed it because you just couldn't wait. So that was 3 tips to targeting large flathead catfish. If you have any more tips, make sure you leave those down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you like this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.